"Let me stay," the Apache whispered. "Your children deserve a father." Western love tales. Life in the town was never easy, but for Clara Bennett, it was especially hard. She had lost her husband 3 years earlier, leaving her alone to care for her 2 children, Lily, who was 8, and Samuel, who was 5. Every day was a struggle to keep food on the table, a roof over their heads, and warmth in their tiny home. Clara's hands were rough from endless chores, chopping wood, mending fences, fetching water from the creek, and tending to a small garden. Yet despite her exhaustion, there was a quiet determination in her eyes, a stubborn flame that refused to be extinguished by the hardships of life. One chilly autumn morning, Clara bundled her children in worn but clean coats and set out to the town market. The crisp wind tugged at her hair, and the leaves crunched under their boots. The market was small, with a few stalls selling fresh vegetables, jars of preserves, and handmade goods. The townspeople moved slowly, wrapped in shawls and scarves, exchanging polite nods but mostly keeping to themselves. Clara's children held tightly to her hands, their faces bright with curiosity despite the cold. As she navigated the market, Clara noticed a man standing at the edge of the town square. He was unlike anyone she had ever seen. His skin was sun-kissed, his hair long and dark, and his eyes held a depth that seemed to see beyond the surface of the world. He watched the market quietly, leaning against a wooden post, as if he belonged more to the land than the town itself. Clara felt a strange pull toward him, though she didn't know why. Her motherly instinct whispered caution, but her heart was curious. She caught his gaze for a brief moment, and he nodded gently, acknowledging her presence without a word. The man's name was Tay, an Apache who had lived on the outskirts of the town for many years. Though some townspeople whispered about him with suspicion, he had never caused harm. Instead, he lived quietly, hunting and gathering from the surrounding forests, always respectful of nature and its balance. He had grown accustomed to solitude, yet there was something about Clara that made him feel drawn out of the shadows. He noticed her strength, her resilience, and the tenderness with which she treated her children. Clara continued through the market, buying small amounts of flour, a few potatoes, and some apples for her children. Lily skipped ahead, pointing at a small basket of bright red apples, while Samuel tugged at her sleeve, asking if they could get a loaf of bread. Clara smiled and nodded, trying to make their lives as joyful as possible despite the hardships. As she walked back toward the edge of town, she heard a soft voice calling, "Excuse me, ma'am." She turned to see Tay standing a few feet away, holding a small bundle of herbs. "I thought these might help with your cough," he said, his voice calm and steady. Clara's eyes widened. She had not told anyone about her persistent cough that had begun during the colder nights. She accepted the bundle with a hesitant smile. "Thank you," she said softly. "That's very kind of you," Tay nodded and looked at the children. "And for them?" he asked, holding out a small bag of dried berries. "Good for energy and keeping warm in the winter." Clara hesitated, feeling a mixture of gratitude and unease. It was rare for someone in town to offer help without expecting something in return. "Thank you," she said again, her voice firmer this time. "You are very generous." Tay simply nodded and stepped back, as if the moment had passed. But Clara felt a strange warmth in her chest, a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in years. She watched him walk away, disappearing into the outskirts of town, blending almost seamlessly with the shadows of the trees. Over the next few days, Clara could not stop thinking about Tay. She found herself glancing toward the forest edge, wondering if he was watching or thinking of her as well. The children asked questions too. "Mother, who is he?" Lily asked one evening as they sat by the fireplace. Clara hesitated, unsure how to explain. "He is someone kind," she said finally. "Someone who cares about us, even if he is different from everyone else in town." Lily nodded, satisfied with the answer, while Samuel simply smiled, trusting his mother's words. Weeks passed, and Tay began to appear more often, always quietly helping where he could. He repaired a broken fence on Clara's small property, brought firewood during particularly cold nights, and even taught the children how to recognize the tracks of different animals in the forest. Clara was careful not to let her feelings show too openly. After all, she had lost love once and feared opening her heart again. Yet, each interaction with Tay brought a sense of peace and safety she hadn't known for years. One late afternoon, as the sun began to dip below the hills, Clara was returning from the creek with a bucket of water. Tay appeared from the shadows, carrying a bundle of freshly gathered herbs. "You work too hard," he said gently. "The children need you, but you need rest too." Clara smiled, feeling both embarrassed and grateful. "I have no choice," she said. "Life doesn't wait for rest." Tay's eyes softened. "Sometimes, life gives us help if we are willing to accept it," he said, placing the herbs down near the porch. His words lingered in the cool evening air, more powerful than he might have realized. Clara felt a shiver run through her, not from the cold, but from the sense that someone truly understood her struggles. That night, after tucking Lily and Samuel into bed, Clara sat by the fire, thinking of Tay. She remembered his quiet strength, the gentleness with which he treated the children, and the deep wisdom in his eyes. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future that was not filled only with struggle and loss. Perhaps there was room in her heart for more than grief. Perhaps there was room for hope. In the following days, Clara noticed subtle changes. The children laughed more easily when Tay was around. Samuel proudly showed Tay his small wooden toys, while Lily asked questions about the forest, eager to learn from him. Clara herself began to smile more, feeling lighter despite the daily burdens. It was not love in the traditional sense yet, but a deep, budding respect and affection, fragile and delicate like a seed waiting to grow. The townspeople, as always, watched cautiously. Some were suspicious of Tay, whispering about his origins and the differences in his culture. Clara ignored them, focusing on the quiet joy that Tay brought into their lives. She realized that love in any form often comes quietly, without fanfare or announcement, and that it is strongest when it is freely given. One evening, as the sun set in shades of orange and pink, Clara and Tay stood near the edge of the forest. The children played nearby, their laughter ringing like music. Tay looked at Clara with a seriousness that made her heart beat faster. "You are strong," he said quietly, "stronger than you know, but you do not have to carry the world alone." Clara met his gaze, feeling the truth in his words. For so long she had been alone, facing every challenge by herself. But now she realized that accepting help did not mean weakness. Perhaps in time it could mean love. And perhaps in this quiet, dusty town surrounded by forests and hills, a new story was beginning, one of hope, trust, and the promise of a family that could grow stronger together. As night fell over Willow Creek, Clara sat by the fireplace, thinking of the future with cautious optimism. She knew life would continue to be difficult, and there would be challenges to face. But she also knew that she was no longer entirely alone. Someone understood her, someone cared for her children as much as she did. And deep in her heart, she felt the first flicker of something she had almost forgotten, the possibility of love again. And somewhere not far from the town, Tay watched the lights of the small wooden house flicker against the darkening sky, silently promising that he would stay close, ready to protect and care for the woman and children who had quietly captured his heart. The days grew shorter as autumn slowly gave way to winter in Willow Creek. The hills surrounding the town were painted in shades of gold, brown, and red, and the wind carried a sharper chill with each passing day. For Clara Bennett, life continued to be a series of endless chores and quiet struggles. Yet now, there was a small light in her days, Tay. He had become a quiet presence in her life, appearing when she least expected but always when he was needed most. One morning, As Clara stepped outside to fetch water from the creek, she found Tay waiting near the edge of the forest. The children were already bundled in warm coats, playing near the fence, laughing despite the cold. Tay held a small bundle in his hands. "I thought these would help," he said, handing her a few sprigs of dried herbs. "Keep you warm, keep you strong." Clara smiled, touched by his thoughtfulness. "You think of everything," she said softly. Tay shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I only notice what needs doing," he replied. His voice carried a calm certainty, a kind of steadiness Clara had come to rely on. That day, Tay helped Clara repair a section of the fence that had been damaged in a recent windstorm. He moved with quiet skill, showing Clara how to secure the posts and tighten the wires. The children watched intently, fascinated by the way he worked. Lily asked questions, her curiosity shining brightly, while Samuel tried to imitate Tay's movements, fumbling but laughing at his own mistakes. Clara watched them, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and gratitude. As the days passed, Tay's presence became more regular. He would appear early in the mornings with bundles of firewood, or stay late into the evenings, helping with chores and offering advice. He never imposed himself, always respectful, yet his quiet strength was undeniable. Clara found herself looking forward to these moments, her days feeling lighter even in the harsh winter cold. One afternoon, as the first snow began to fall, Clara struggled to carry a heavy basket of vegetables back to her home. The snow made the path slippery, and her boots sank into the softening ground. She slipped, sending the basket tumbling, and cursed softly under her breath. Before she could gather the scattered vegetables, Tay was there, steadying her with strong hands. "You must be careful," he said gently. "The snow hides many dangers." Clara felt her cheeks flush, partly from the cold and partly from the sudden closeness of his presence. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling the warmth of his hands linger longer than necessary. The children rushed over, helping to gather the vegetables, their laughter mixing with the quiet sound of snow falling around them. That evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Clara found herself telling Tay about her late husband. She had never spoken much of him, keeping her grief tucked away in the corners of her heart. But somehow, in the quiet warmth of the fire and the steady gaze of Tay, she felt safe enough to speak. "He was a good man," she said softly. "He loved us fiercely, but he was taken too soon. Sometimes I wonder if I will ever find peace or happiness again." Tay listened without interruption, his eyes thoughtful. When she finished, he said quietly, "Happiness is not something lost forever. It is found again, sometimes in places we do not expect. Sometimes it finds us when we are ready to accept it." Clara nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle gently over her heart. The children grew more attached to Tay with each passing day. Samuel would run to meet him at the edge of the forest, shouting excitedly about the small wooden toys he had made, while Lily would ask him questions about the forest, the animals, and the stars. Tay answered patiently, teaching them about nature, survival, and respect for all living things. Clara often watched from the porch, smiling softly. She could see how the children thrived under his guidance and care, how their laughter and curiosity seemed brighter when he was near. But life in the frontier town was never free from challenges. One morning, Clara discovered that a shipment of flour she had ordered had not arrived. Panic set in as she realized she had only enough to last a few more days. The children's hunger tugged at her heart, and she struggled to find a solution. As she paced her small kitchen, Tay appeared at the door, carrying a burlap sack filled with flour he had traded for with a neighboring town. "You must not worry alone," he said quietly. "There are always ways to find help if we are willing to ask." Clara felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. She realized that Tay's presence was not just a comfort, it was a lifeline. He had become part of their lives in ways she had never anticipated. Yet, at the same time, a small fear lingered in her heart. What would the townspeople think? Could she allow herself to trust someone again after all she had lost? One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Clara and Tay sat outside under a sky full of stars. The cold was biting, but the warmth of the small fire between them kept them comfortable. "Do you ever wish things were different?" Clara asked softly, her voice barely audible. Tay looked at her, his expression unreadable at first, then softened. "I wish only for what is right," he said. "For safety, for peace, for love that does not harm. That is all any of us can hope for." Clara felt a lump in her throat. There was something in the way he spoke, something sincere and unwavering that made her heart ache with longing. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a life that included him, not just as a helper or friend, but as someone who could share her heart and her home. The winter grew harsher, and with it came more challenges. One particularly cold night, a heavy snowstorm trapped Clara and the children inside their home. The wind howled through the gaps in the wooden walls, rattling the windows and making the fire flicker dangerously low. Clara's anxiety rose as she realized they were running out of food and firewood. She tried to keep calm for the children, but inside, fear gnawed at her. Just as the situation seemed unbearable, Tay appeared, cutting through the snow with a bundle of firewood on his back. He brought food, blankets, and warmth, moving quickly but carefully through the storm. Clara watched him work, her heart swelling with gratitude and something deeper she could not yet name. He stayed through the night, tending the fire and ensuring the children were safe and warm. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving a sparkling blanket of snow over the town. The children were laughing as they played outside, throwing snowballs and making footprints in the fresh snow. Clara stood at the doorway, watching Tay kneel beside them, teaching Samuel how to build a small snow shelter while Lily learned how to track animal footprints. Her heart ached with a quiet, hopeful joy. Over the following weeks, Clara and Tay grew closer. Their interactions, once simple and practical, began to carry subtle signs of affection. A touch lingered a moment longer than necessary. A shared glance held unspoken understanding, a smile that seemed to light up the grayest of days. Clara's heart, long guarded, began to soften. She knew she was beginning to trust him, to rely on him not just for help but for companionship. Yet there were moments of doubt. Clara worried about what the townspeople would say, about the whispers of gossip that might follow. She feared opening her heart again, afraid of pain or rejection. But Tay never pushed, never demanded. He simply stayed, offering his help, his knowledge, and his quiet strength. Slowly, Clara realized that trust and love were not things to be forced. They grew naturally, like a tree taking root in fertile soil. One evening, as the sun set and painted the snow in shades of gold and pink, Clara and Tay walked along the edge of the forest with the children. The air was crisp, and the world felt still and magical. Tay pointed out animal tracks, explained the patterns of the stars, and shared stories of the forest that made the children giggle with delight. Clara walked beside him, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in years. As they returned home, Clara realized that her life had changed in ways she could never have predicted. The struggles of the frontier were still there, still harsh and demanding, but now there was laughter, companionship, and the quiet presence of someone who truly cared. She looked at Tay, watching him playfully ruffle Samuel's hair, and felt a sense of gratitude deeper than words. For the first time in years, Clara allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for happiness, for love, and for a family that could grow stronger together. She did not know what the future would hold, but she knew one thing with certainty. With Tay by her side, the harsh winters, the lonely nights, and the daily struggles seemed easier to bear. And in the quiet moments, when the fire crackled and the children slept soundly, she felt a flicker of something that had been missing from her life for far too long. The possibility of love, trust, and a family united by more than blood. A family built on care, respect, and hope. Winter in Willow Creek had settled deeply. Snow lay thick on the ground, covering the hills, forests, and the town's narrow streets in a blanket of white. The wind whistled through the wooden buildings, rattling shutters and making the trees sway like tall dancers in the cold. For Clara Bennett and her children, life had grown slightly easier with Tay's help, yet the harsh reality of frontier life remained. Supplies were always limited, and the cold nights were long and unforgiving. Despite the hardships, there was warmth in the small home that Clara shared with her children, a warmth brought by Tay's quiet presence and the laughter of Lily and Samuel. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned shades of crimson and purple, Clara was tending to the fire when she heard a knock at the door. She opened it to find Tay standing there, carrying a large bundle of firewood. "I thought this would help for the night," he said, setting the wood down gently. His breath formed small clouds in the frosty air. Clara smiled, feeling gratitude rise in her chest. "You always think of everything," she said softly. Tay shook his head. "I only do what I can. It is enough if you and the children are safe and warm." His eyes lingered on her for a moment, filled with something she could not name, a mixture of care, concern, and something deeper, something that made her heart beat a little faster. She looked away, suddenly shy, feeling the heat of a blush rising to her cheeks. As winter nights grew colder, the days became filled with constant work and preparation. Clara would rise early to fetch water from the partially frozen creek, chop wood, and prepare meals from the limited supplies she had. Tay often arrived to assist her, helping carry heavy buckets, stack firewood, or repair worn fences. The children were increasingly attached to him, following his movements with wide, fascinated eyes. Lily would ask questions about the forest, the animals, and the stars, while Samuel tried to mimic Tay's every motion, clumsy but cheerful. Clara often paused to watch them, feeling a deep, quiet sense of relief that her children had someone to look up to, someone who could teach them about the world with patience and care. One particularly harsh night, the snowstorm arrived with little warning. The wind screamed outside, and the snow fell thick and fast, covering the town in a blinding white. Clara hurried to secure the windows and doors, ensuring that the children were warm under layers of blankets. The fire flickered dangerously low, and panic began to gnaw at her. Supplies were running short, and the storm showed no sign of stopping. Just as fear began to take hold, a shadow appeared at the edge of the window. Tay had braved the storm to bring firewood and additional food. His clothing was damp and snow clung to his hair and shoulders, but his eyes held calm determination. He moved quickly, stacking the wood by the fire and placing the food on the table. Clara felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by gratitude. "I don't know what I would do without you," she whispered. "You would survive," Tay said gently. "You are strong, Clara, but you do not have to do it alone." His words struck her deeply, as though they had been waiting for her all these years. She realized then that she had begun to rely on him, not just for help but for emotional support, for comfort, and for the quiet courage he inspired. After the storm passed, the children were excited to play in the fresh snow, their laughter carrying across the quiet town. Samuel built small snowmen while Lily tried to make tracks that matched the patterns Tay had taught her to identify. Clara watched them from the doorway, her heart swelling with pride and relief. Tay knelt beside Samuel, showing him how to pat snow into firm shapes, while Lily asked him to explain the tracks of rabbits and foxes. There was a harmony in their interactions, a sense of family forming quietly but firmly, as if it had always been meant to be. But life in the frontier town was not free from danger. One morning, Clara noticed that Samuel was unusually quiet. She found him staring at a broken window, one that had been damaged by the previous storm. Panic rose in her chest. She knew the children were more vulnerable if the home was not secure. As she tried to fix the window, her hands trembling in the cold, she realized she could not manage it alone. Tay arrived just then, his presence steadying her. "Let me help," he said simply. Together they repaired the window, securing the boards tightly against the cold wind. As they worked, Tay spoke softly, telling her stories of survival and resilience, sharing wisdom that seemed to ease both her fear and her worry. Clara realized how much she trusted him, how deeply she had come to depend on his calm strength. As the days went by, Clara noticed another change within herself. Her heart, long guarded and heavy with past loss, began to open in ways she had never thought possible. She found herself thinking of Tay when he was not around, feeling a quiet longing when he was busy in the forest or helping other townspeople. She wondered if he felt the same, but she was hesitant to voice such thoughts, fearing rejection or judgment. One evening, as they sat together outside by a small fire, Clara's thoughts could no longer remain silent. "Tay," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the crackling of the fire, I don't know what I would do without you. You've changed our lives in ways I can't even explain." Tay looked at her, his eyes steady and filled with warmth. "Clara," he said, his voice gentle, "I have seen your strength. You are remarkable, but strength alone is not meant to carry the weight of the world. Let me share it with you. Let me stay." His words hung in the cold night air, heavy with meaning and hope. Clara felt her breath catch. She realized that Tay was offering more than help or friendship. He was offering himself fully to her and her children. The thought of opening her heart again was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had lost love once, but now, in the quiet of the snowy night, she sensed that perhaps life was giving her a second chance, a chance at companionship, at family, and at happiness. The following weeks brought both joy and tension. Clara and Tay grew closer, their bond deepening with each shared task and quiet moment. The children adored him, and he had become a figure of guidance and safety in their lives. Yet, the town's whispers grew louder. Some townspeople were suspicious, questioning Clara's choices, while others feared the cultural differences between her and Tay. Clara, however, had grown resolute. She would no longer let the opinions of others dictate the happiness of her family. One particularly cold morning, Clara woke to find Tay outside, chopping wood in the pale light of dawn. The children watched in fascination, cheering him on as he worked. Clara joined them, carrying buckets of water and helping to feed the small fire that kept them warm. The scene was simple yet profound. A mother, her children, and a man who had quietly become the center of their lives, working together against the harshness of the frontier. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Clara and Tay sat by the fireplace. The room was filled with the warm glow of the fire, casting shadows on the walls. Clara looked at Tay, her heart full of unspoken thoughts. Do you think it is possible," she asked quietly, "to find happiness again after everything?" Tay took her hand gently, his touch firm yet comforting. "I do," he said simply. "Happiness is not about forgetting the past. It is about embracing what we have now and what we choose to build together. You and your children deserve love, Clara, and so do you." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and the stirrings of something she had almost forgotten, hope. She realized that Tay's words were more than comforting, they were an invitation. An invitation to trust, to love, and to embrace a future that had seemed impossible for so long. The winter continued, harsh and unforgiving, but Clara, her children, and Tay faced it together. Snowstorms, freezing nights, and limited supplies were no longer as frightening, for they had each other. The bond they had formed was growing stronger, a foundation built on trust, respect, and quiet devotion. And in the depths of her heart, Clara knew that change was coming. Something significant was about to happen, something that would test their courage, their love, and their ability to protect one another. The first snow of February arrived quietly, covering the town in a soft, glittering layer. Clara watched from the porch as the children played, their laughter ringing through the crisp air. Tay stood beside her, his gaze calm and protective. In that moment, Clara realized that the turning point of their lives was near. The challenges of frontier life had tested them, but the greatest test was not the snow, the wind, or the isolation. It was the moment when hearts are truly revealed, when love and trust must be acknowledged despite fear. And somewhere deep inside, Clara felt the stirring of a new beginning, a promise of love, protection, and family that would not be broken. Spring was slowly arriving in Willow Creek, bringing with it a promise of renewal. The snow had begun to melt, revealing green shoots of grass and early wildflowers that peeked out from beneath the white blanket. The air was filled with the scent of damp earth and budding trees, and the sunlight felt warmer, brighter, as if celebrating the return of life. For Clara Bennett and her children, these changes were not only in nature but also in their hearts. Life had begun to feel lighter, happier, and more secure with Tay, now an accepted part of their daily existence. Tay had become more than just a helper. He was now an inseparable part of their family. Clara found herself laughing more, sharing stories and moments of joy with him that had once been rare. The children, Lily and Samuel, were thriving under his guidance. Samuel had become more confident and adventurous, often exploring the edges of the forest under Tay's watchful eye, while Lily had developed a fascination with tracking animals and identifying plants, skills Tay taught her with patience and pride. However, life on the frontier was never without its challenges. Despite Tay's gentle and helpful nature, there were still whispers among the townspeople. Some were suspicious of him because he was Apache, while others did not understand why Clara, a widowed mother, would allow him into her family's life. The gossip sometimes reached Clara's ears, but she had grown stronger, more confident in her choices. She knew that what mattered most was the safety and happiness of her children, and she trusted Tay completely. One morning, as Clara prepared breakfast, she noticed Tay working quietly outside. The sun shone down, glinting off the dew-covered grass, and the children played nearby. Clara stepped outside to join him. "You've been working hard," she said softly. "Do you rest at all?" Tay shook his head, smiling faintly. "There is always work to be done. But it is easier when you are not alone." His words carried a weight of sincerity that touched Clara deeply. She realized that he truly cared, not only for her and her children, but also for the home they were building together. As the days passed, Clara and Tay's bond grew stronger. They began sharing more than chores. They shared hopes, dreams, and quiet moments of reflection. One afternoon, while repairing a section of the fence along the edge of their property, Clara glanced at Tay. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. Tay paused, looking out over the hills. "I think about it every day," he said. "I think about safety, about happiness, about family. I want to be part of yours if you will have me." Clara's heart swelled. She felt a mixture of fear and joy. The fear of opening her heart completely, and the joy of realizing that perhaps, finally, she could allow herself to love again. The children sensed the growing closeness between Clara and Tay. Lily often watched them from the porch with a smile, noticing the small gestures, a hand resting briefly on another, a shared glance that lingered longer than necessary. Samuel, in his innocent way, began calling Tay Papa, a word that brought both laughter and tears to Clara. She realized that Tay was not only becoming a father figure to her children, but also a protector and guide, someone they trusted completely. However, the town's prejudice could not be ignored forever. One afternoon, while Clara was visiting the market, a group of townspeople approached her. Their faces were stern, their voices low but sharp. "Clara," one woman said, "we mean no offense, but it is unusual a man like Tay being part of your household. People talk and the children, well, we only want what is best for them." Clara took a deep breath, her hands tightening around the basket she carried. "I appreciate your concern," she said firmly, "but my children are happy, safe, and loved. That is what matters." Tay has never harmed anyone and he is part of our family. We are doing well and I ask that you respect that." The group murmured, some nodding reluctantly, others frowning, but Clara stood her ground. She felt a surge of strength, a recognition that her family's happiness was hers to protect, no matter the opinions of others. Back at home, Tay noticed the tension in Clara's expression when she returned. "What happened?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Clara explained briefly, her voice calm but firm. "They were questioning us, questioning our family, but I made it clear that we are happy and we will not let their fear or prejudice control us." Tay placed a hand over hers, a gentle but steady reassurance. "You are strong, Clara," he said, "and together we are stronger. Let them talk. We have each other and that is what matters most." The weeks that followed were filled with small, meaningful victories. Clara and Tay worked together to prepare the garden for spring planting. The children helped, laughing and playing as they learned the rhythms of planting seeds and tending young plants. Each day brought moments of joy and bonding, and the home felt more alive than it had in years. Clara began to see Tay not just as a helper or companion, but as someone she could truly rely on, someone she could love without fear. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, casting long shadows over the snow-melting fields, Clara and Tay sat outside with the children playing nearby. "I've been thinking," Clara said quietly, "about what you said that night in winter about sharing the weight of life. I think I am ready." Tay looked at her, hope flickering in his eyes. "Ready for what?" he asked gently. "To let you be part of our lives completely," Clara said. "Not just as a helper, not just as a friend, but as family. We trust you, Tay." "And I trust you with my heart." A gentle smile spread across Tay's face. "I am honored, Clara," he said softly. "I have only ever wanted to help, to protect, to care, and now to love." He reached for her hand, holding it firmly yet tenderly. Clara felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling of completeness she had not known since before her husband passed. The children ran toward them, Lily holding a small bouquet of wildflowers she had picked in the field. "For you," she said shyly, handing the flowers to Tay. Samuel followed, presenting a small wooden carving he had made himself. Tay accepted both gifts with a laugh and a bow, kneeling to meet the children at eye level. "Thank you," he said warmly. "You have made me the happiest man alive." That night, after the children had gone to bed, Clara and Tay sat by the fire, speaking quietly about the future. They spoke of planting more vegetables, of fixing the old barn, of teaching the children skills they would need to survive and thrive in the frontier. They spoke of dreams that seemed simple yet profound, dreams of love, family, and a life filled with purpose. But their peace was not without its challenges. The town continued to murmur and gossip, and some individuals remained openly skeptical of Tay's place in their family. Clara and Tay knew that there would always be obstacles, but they also knew that their bond, built on trust, care, and shared hardship, was strong enough to withstand them. Together, they faced each day with courage and determination, refusing to let fear or prejudice dictate the happiness of their home. As spring continued, the garden began to bloom, the days grew warmer, and the forest around Willow Creek filled with birdsong. Clara felt a sense of renewal, not just in nature but within herself. She realized that love, trust, and family could grow even in the harshest of environments if nurtured with patience and care. Tay had not only helped them survive the cold and isolation of winter, but it also brought warmth and hope into their hearts. One afternoon, while working in the garden, Clara paused to watch Tay teach Samuel how to plant seeds in neat rows. Lily was nearby, carefully watering young sprouts under his watchful eye. Clara felt tears prick her eyes, not of sorrow but of gratitude. They had faced hardships together, and yet here they were, stronger and happier for it. She realized that life's greatest rewards often come quietly, in the form of shared moments, trust, and the courage to open one's heart. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Clara turned to Tay. "Thank you," she said softly. "For staying, for helping, for loving us." Tay took her hands in his, looking deeply into her eyes. "I promise to stay," he said, "and I will. Your family, your happiness. It is my purpose, my honor, my joy. I am yours, Clara, as much as you are mine." Clara smiled, feeling a sense of completeness she had not known in years. She realized that the turning point they had been waiting for, the moment when trust and love could truly take root, had arrived. Together they had faced hardship, prejudice, and fear, and emerged stronger, united, and ready to face whatever the future might bring. For the first time, Clara felt truly at peace. Life in Willow Creek was still hard, still demanding, but with Tay by her side, she knew they could endure anything. They had grown not only as a family but as individuals, learning the power of trust, the strength of love, and the courage required to protect what matters most. And in that quiet, blooming spring, a new chapter of hope and happiness began for Clara, her children, and Tay, a chapter built on love, resilience, and the promise of a future together. Summer had arrived in Willow Creek, painting the town and surrounding hills in vibrant shades of green. Flowers bloomed in every corner, birds sang melodies from the trees, and the sun shone warmly on the wooden buildings and dusty streets. For Clara Bennett, her children, and Tay, life had grown full and bright, a stark contrast to the harsh winters they had endured. Their home, once just a shelter from the cold, now felt like a haven, a place filled with laughter, love, and the quiet rhythm of family life. Tay had become more than a friend or a helper. He was truly part of their lives in every sense. The children no longer saw him as an outsider. Samuel ran to him every morning, calling him Papa, while Lily sought his guidance for everything from planting flowers to reading the patterns of the clouds. Tay, in turn, treated them as his own, teaching them skills and lessons with patience, kindness, and gentle discipline. Clara watched these moments with a mixture of pride, joy, and gratitude. For the first time in years, she felt that her family was complete. Despite their happiness, challenges still arose. The town's whispers had lessened but not disappeared entirely. Some townspeople continued to watch with cautious suspicion, while others seemed to observe in quiet curiosity, unsure of what to make of the bond between Clara and Tay. But Clara had grown resolute. She no longer allowed the opinions of others to dictate her choices or her family's happiness. She had learned that love, trust, and commitment were stronger than gossip, prejudice, or fear. One sunny afternoon, Clara and Tay worked together in the garden, planting rows of vegetables that would feed the family for months to come. The children helped eagerly, Lily carefully watering the young sprouts, while Samuel dug small holes for seeds under Tay's watchful eye. The scene was peaceful and ordinary, yet for Clara it was extraordinary. She looked at Tay, feeling a quiet swell of love and gratitude. "I never imagined life could feel like this again," she said softly. Tay smiled, his eyes reflecting the warmth of the sun. "Life has a way of healing," he said. "It teaches us patience, courage, and hope, and sometimes it gives us second chances." His words reminded Clara of the long journey they had traveled, from lonely winters and harsh struggles to the warmth and comfort of a true family. She realized that Tay had not just helped them survive, he had helped them thrive, bringing love and joy where there had once been only fear and grief. As summer deepened, the family continued to grow closer. They spent long days exploring the outskirts of Willow Creek, learning about the forest, observing animals, and gathering wild herbs and berries. Tay taught the children about tracking animals, reading the signs of the land, and understanding the delicate balance of nature. Clara often joined them, marveling at how much her children had learned and how happy they were in these moments. The laughter that filled the air seemed to chase away the memory of past hardships, replacing it with hope and contentment. One day, Clara received a visit from a neighbor who had once been skeptical of Tay. The woman approached cautiously, her eyes shifting nervously. "Clara," she said, "I wanted to apologize. I see now Tay has been a blessing to your family. The children are happy and you seem stronger than ever." Clara smiled gently, a warmth in her heart at the acknowledgement. "Thank you," she said. "It has not been easy, but love and trust have guided us through. That is what matters most." The woman nodded, her respect for Clara and her family evident, and left quietly, leaving Clara with a sense of peace and validation. The children, as always, were at the center of their lives. One morning, Clara watched as Samuel carefully led Lily through a small obstacle course he had built in the garden, mimicking the lessons Tay had taught him. Tay stood nearby, smiling, offering guidance only when necessary. Clara felt a sense of pride and joy. Her children had grown strong, confident, and happy, and she knew that much of that growth was due to Tay's patient care and love. As the days passed, Clara and Tay began discussing the future in more concrete terms. They spoke of expanding their home, planting more crops, and preparing for the seasons ahead. They dreamed of teaching the children skills that would serve them well as they grew, ensuring they were prepared for both the hardships and joys of frontier life. These conversations, once filled with caution and uncertainty, now carried excitement and hope. Together, they were building a life that was secure, loving, and full of promise. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink, Clara and Tay sat on the porch, watching the children play in the fading light. Samuel was chasing a small rabbit, laughing as Lily pretended to track its movements. Tay reached for Clara's hand, holding it firmly yet tenderly. "We have come a long way," he said softly, "through winter, fear, and uncertainty, and now we are here together." Clara squeezed his hand, feeling a warmth that went beyond the summer sun. "I know," she said. "And I am grateful for you, for the children, for every moment that has led us here." She paused, her heart swelling with emotion. "I never imagined life could feel this full, this complete." Tay's eyes softened. "It is because we faced everything together," he said. "Love is not just a feeling, Clara. It is action, patience, courage, and trust, and we have shown all of that every day." Clara nodded, realizing that he was right. Their love had grown quietly, steadily, through shared struggles, small acts of care, and unwavering support. It was a love that had been tested and had endured, stronger for every challenge. The summer brought more than warmth and sunlight. It brought a sense of belonging and acceptance. The town, seeing the happiness and stability of Clara's family, began to offer quiet acknowledgement. Some neighbors offered help with chores. Others exchanged smiles and greetings that were warmer than before. The children, once cautious and shy, now played freely with others in the town, secure in the knowledge that their family was strong and united. One afternoon, as Clara and Tay returned from gathering herbs in the forest, Lily ran ahead, calling out excitedly. Samuel followed, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers he had picked for his mother. Tay lifted the children onto his shoulders playfully, and Clara laughed, the sound light and joyful, filling the warm summer air. She felt a sense of completeness she had never known, her heart at peace, her family thriving, and the promise of a future full of love. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Clara and Tay sat by the fire. The room was filled with the gentle crackle of flames, casting shadows on the walls. Clara leaned against Tay, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. "Do you think this is what happiness feels like?" she asked softly. Tay took her hand in his gaze steady and loving. "Yes," he said. "It is not perfect and life will always bring challenges, but happiness is found in moments like this, in love, trust, and family. It is found in knowing that we are together, that we face the world united, and that our hearts are safe with one another." Clara smiled, tears of gratitude welling in her eyes. She realized that Tay had not only become a partner and a father to her children, but also a source of strength and inspiration. His presence had transformed their lives, turning struggle into hope, fear into courage, and loneliness into love. She felt an overwhelming sense of peace, knowing that they had built something lasting, a family bound not just by circumstance, but by choice, care, and devotion. The following weeks were filled with joyful activity. The garden flourished under their care, the children learned new skills from Tay, and Clara found herself laughing and living fully again. Life in Willow Creek was still demanding, but it was also vibrant, full of moments that mattered. Clara realized that happiness was not something to be sought in grand gestures or distant dreams. It was found in the daily acts of love, care, and connection. One warm summer evening, as the sun set over the rolling hills, Clara, Tay, and the children sat together outside, watching the sky turn shades of pink, orange, and purple. The air was filled with the scent of wildflowers and the gentle chirping of birds. Samuel rested his head on Tay's shoulder, while Lily held Clara's hand, her eyes bright with wonder. Clara looked at the faces of the people she loved most and felt a profound sense of fulfillment. In that quiet, perfect moment, she realized that life had given her a second chance. A chance to love, to trust, and to build a family filled with warmth, joy, and resilience. Tay had not only stayed by her side but had become a true partner in every sense, offering care, guidance, and unwavering support. Her children had found a father figure in him, and together they had created a home where love reigned above fear and hardship. Clara whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else, "We are home." Tay tightened his hold on her hand, smiling. "Yes," he said quietly, "we are home. And as long as we are together, we will face everything with love, courage, and hope." The children laughed and played nearby, the sound echoing through the warm summer air. Clara looked at Tay, feeling the weight of the past years, the loneliness, the grief, the fear, and then the beauty of the present, the love, the trust, the family they had built. She realized that life's greatest gifts often come quietly, in moments of patience, care, and steadfast devotion. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over Willow Creek, Clara, Tay, and the children sat together, hearts full, knowing that they had found something rare and precious, true love, a united family, and a home where happiness would flourish for years to come.